like 6 years where it's full on gamification. And I've also been teaching college classes for 12 years in the literacy department. So I know that there's a lot of college level teachers here too. So I really want to cover a number of elements of game design. So I first want to just talk about why gamification is effective for active learning. We'll look at some game design and also think about, for those of you who are in the classroom, how we can redesign lessons to include games and game-based learning. So we're going to start with a little quick draw game. And I want you to take any scrap of paper that you have around. It could be a Post-it or a piece of paper. And I'm going to give you 90 seconds to draw something that represents your favorite childhood game. And we're going to share our images on Twitter using the hashtag ELCC gamification. So your time starts now. Go. So your favorite childhood game, that could be anything. That can be an outdoor game, it could be a sports game, it could be a video game, it could be a board game, completely up to you. So we have about 30 seconds left. If you want, you can, if you're holding up, you might want to just, I don't know if you can see that there. A little hard to make out, but I did a little Scrabble cubes. That is the English teacher in me. It was hard for me to see Amy with the background.
Monopoly. It was Monopoly money.
Awesome. Okay, time's up. So, oh, I see another, kick the can. so many different, I got that one right. So just a little quick draw to get you in the game thinking today. Quick draws are great for little group challenges, brainstorms, representations, visualizations. In my classroom, it could be an interpretation of a text or a science, a concept. You can prototype something. Quick draw can actually be a drawing activity, or you can even use other manipulatives depending on your students. And I will say college students to kindergartners love Play-Doh, or Legos are great activities just to do a little, what we call a mini game. So we have today two different types of games going on when we think about gamification. We have game-based learning, where we're using games to enhance that learning experience, to meet a learning objective, to practice and understand a concept. And then we have gamification, which is the application of game-like mechanics. And that's used really for motivation and engagement, as well as meeting the learning objective. So I'm going to start by talking about some game-based learning activities, and then we'll move into gamification. And I think a lot of people right now might be using or doing gamification and game-based learning in their own lives. We know that the military uses video games to help their basic training students to understand warfare. If you ever play the Monopoly at whether it's McDonald's or My Supermarket does a Monopoly game every spring. If you're somebody who is a Starbucks coffee drinker and you have that app and you're collecting those points for each of your purchases so you get a free drink, again, that's gamification in our everyday lives. Those of you who work out, whether it's Nike or something like like Peloton, you have monthly challenges and badges that you receive based on the amount that you work out. So we see a lot of positive elements of gaming, and I will say that in the past 7-8 years, there's been a lot of research to really focus on what we'll call good gaming, or what James Gee calls good gaming. Problem solving, we're using facts and information as tools. Students are learning and understanding and deconstructing problems in context. You have that actionable feedback. You know that even if we're thinking about video games, once you die, that is instant feedback. You go right back in and you take what you learn to move forward. And that learning and the assessment are really tightly integrated, and it's customized. And failure is a source of feedback and learning. What I love when I watch my own high schooler play video games is that if he fails in the game, he's determined to go back and to keep on playing until he can really succeed and make it to the next level and level up. He doesn't take that failure as a point of like, I'm done, I quit the game. And when we think about schooling, you know, we have this success failure dichotomy that a lot of students shut down when they see a failing grade or they fail at an activity and they quit. But when it comes to the video game and the gaming, they keep on going. So we want to take those elements of failure that they're utilizing in their games to use that as actionable feedback and learning so that they keep on utilizing that growth mindset in the classroom as well as when they're playing games. So some of you might already be playing digital games in your classroom. We have things like Gimkit and Kahoot and Quizzies and Quizlet Live. These are used throughout elementary, middle school, and high school, and sometimes even colleges to reinforce a key idea. These are our digital mini games that our students are playing with. And then we can also take those traditional board games, the Monopoly, the Scrabble, the Operation, the Battleship, Guess Who, and we can actually use them to teach or to reinforce and practice learning with an idea. Here from my own classroom, I have 2 different stations set up where there is this game called I Dissent, which is all based around Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but it's sort of what I call a 30-second challenge where students pick a card and they have to share whether they support it or they don't support that idea, they agree or disagree. And it's really a game of verbal communication skills and persuasion skills without blackmail and bribery. And then the traditional game of Heads Up, where you could play this both digitally or play it with the actual headbands and the cards, whether you're playing Heads Up or headbands, where you have to say what the word is on the card without giving an actual clue. And I've also made Heads Up games for the books and the literature we read, like To Kill a Mockingbird, and I even have a collection of Heads Up cards from dystopian books that my students read, where we just practice our learning and our understanding to reinforce an idea or a concept or a study characterization. And these are great little mini classroom games that help us to slowly get our toes wet into game-based learning. But then if we think about all the game shows on TV, whether it's Survivor or Fear Factor, I'm going to go back to my own youth and talk about Legends of the Hidden Temple, because we can, once we get our toes wet with the game-based learning and mini games, we could start to look at some multi-layered games. And for me growing up and watching Nickelodeon, one of my favorite game shows, I'll say, was Legends of the Hidden Temple, where you had Almanac come in and he had a mystery for the day, and then teams of students, of young people, had to answer questions around the legend. And there was multiple different layers in the game. So hold on a second. Okay. So when I thought about this and I watched a number of different games, a number of different old episodes on YouTube of Legends of Hidden Temple, I thought, oh, this would be a great game to bring into my classroom. Now, the first part of the game, the students, the young people, they had to get across a moat in a boat. That's not going to happen, but I called that my physical challenge. And then there were different mental challenges, and the game was broken up between these different mental and physical challenges. And my students were starting a social justice unit, so I thought, let's take this idea of Legends of Hidden Temple and make it Legends of Hidden Courage. And there you'll see that I took that almanac sign for us to play. And in one class period, my students had to do, we omitted the moat part, but they had the steps of knowledge in round one. It was a mental challenge. We used Quizlet Live. They worked in teams. They had to identify different upstanders throughout history. And then for my students who won, they got experience points. And some of them, depending on the challenge, even won what we call the pendant of life, which was sort of a pass to get out of a notebook check or a quiz of their choosing, which they held onto, and so many students of them wanted them. Then I threw in a Play-Doh challenge as the next round. We had a random dice roll, you can see from the different levels, and we kept building it up. So when I thought about, you know, how can I truly engage my students, create a hook, and want them to think about what they already know about social justice and apply it to the reading and the writing unit we were going to do, this became a great template for me to activate their engagement and motivation. So there were 4 rounds, just like there are 4 rounds in Legends of Hidden Temple. We had the physical challenge, the mental challenge, a physical challenge, and then the final run was an obstacle course. That could be a scavenger hunt. So when we think about designing a multi-layer game, we want to go horizontal with our game plan. So think about 3 to 4 activities that you can push together for this collaborative group. And what I've done here, and there's a little website on the bottom, and everything's available on my blog, but I created a template for you to copy and utilize and start building around your story and your theme about whatever you might be building or creating. So I'll stop right here and see if there are any questions before we move forward. So that's just one aspect, and getting you into thinking about gamification. So if you have any questions, add that to the chat. And I'll just take a moment to pause. So it could be like Rachel said, somebody said, I saw Monopoly there. So even it doesn't have to be Legends of Hidden Temple. That was just something that I loved. I've done a Fear Factor Survivor type scavenger hunt in my classroom to really help with that. And just to answer your question, Melissa, what do you mean when you go horizontal? Is rather than take my lesson day by day, I'm going to do this activity Monday, I'm going to do this activity Tuesday, Wednesday. I look at all of the activities that I want or I have planned for my students, and I look at it across the board of what can I put together in my game or my quest or my missions so that students are working on it, not like vertically day by day, but stretching across our game plan or our mission, if that makes sense. So, and I think this works in any class. I have, you know, in my book, Gamify Literacy, one of my collaborators talks about in her own library how she made an entire gamified research unit with her students. Um, and and she talked about it was like a whole space travel theme, and we'll get to themes in a short moment, that she was able to use this space traveling to a new planet idea to help her students understand how to research and move around and find reliable sources in their research. And I do gameplay across for new content, for review. There's it too as a hook in the case of Legends of the Hidden Temple that was started out as a hook, but I'm doing gameplay throughout my classroom all the time to teach a new concept, to practice learning, to do some review, to help with assessment. So from my little mini games and my game-based activities, I started to get more involved and meet people who had full-on gamified their entire classroom. And I was completely taken aback by this, and I thought this would be the best place for me to take my classroom and my teaching to a new level, to really engage my students and keep them motivated throughout. So in terms of elements of gamification, how that's different is because not only are we playing games, and when you come into my classroom, we might not be playing a game every single day, but there's a game-based storyline that sort of drives my whole entire school year. And then each of the units that my students are working on, I don't necessarily call them units, they're more missions and quests, are related and built into this storyline. My students have avatars. They get to pick who their avatar is. They write about them. They are constantly I'll say building armor and changing the clothes of their avatar. There are different challenges and quests throughout each of the unit that they're working on. They're working towards gaining points as well as badges, and each one has its own different powers and privileges. It's all based on collaboration and teamwork. My students are working together in teams, and then they're also individually trying to earn as many points as possible. I might throw in an add-on here or there, like that Pendant of Life, which is maybe like a homework pass or some other power or privilege. And when it comes to thinking about what tools we can use for gamification, there are your teachers and educators who are their own homebrew masters and make their own gamification spreadsheets on Excel. But there's also a website, classcraft.com, which has a free and a premium level, which offers all different elements that I'll talk about in a little bit. So the quest premise, thinking about what drives my entire classroom. It took me probably 2 years in my gamification exploration to really figure out what was the storyline that was going to drive my whole classroom with our game. For some people, they choose adventure or Indiana Jones or Pac-Man or Star Wars. And then I started reading this young adult book by Tracy Chee called The Reader, which is about a world where there is no more books. Everything is oral language, and the only way for your history and your story to continue to survive is by having someone share your story. And once your story is gone, then you're gone. And so this idea of the fact that books would be non-existent anymore, I loved this idea. The book, The Reader, is actually there are three different books. There's the reader, the speaker, and the storyteller. Those of you that love young adult literature, that love fantasy, I highly recommend it. The book is fascinating. And in her story, our main character, Sephia, she finds a book. She realizes that her parents were the keepers of one of the few books that was still in existence, and the power of the book. And throughout the book, there are so many different ciphers and clues and puzzles for you to solve as you're reading it. It becomes a mystery. So once I read this, I thought, this is my storyline. So I've adapted Tracy Chee's book for the storyline in my own classroom, and that propels the game and the story. I've even created like a little iMovie trailer to entice my students and to help them become involved in the book. Because as we move towards digital literacy, and our students are becoming more and more biliteracy with print and digital text, you know, this idea of whether or not we need the printed books, we need these words, is a huge debate. And that sort of drives my entire unit for the year. So building your own game-based storyline, you know, think about what your objective is. What is the time frame? Are you going to do this over the course of a year? Are you going to do this for one unit, for a semester? That's really up to you to decide. If you're beginning to gamification and game-based learning, I would start with a unit and then build from there. I started in the spring semester with my students. I tagged one of my students who was an avid video game player. I said, can you help me with this? And he sort of helped me set up my game. And I've been building it out ever since. Out of the 6 different units I teach with my 8th graders over the course of the school year, all but one are gamified. I haven't gamified my Holocaust and World War II unit. I sort of struggle with that because I don't want to make a game out of something that dramatic in history. But every other element is a quest or a mission and a playlist. So think about, what is the goal of your game and what mechanics will be involved. You know, it could be based on a current game, a movie, a book that you want to inspire your students. Like, you know, here we're dealing with the COVID virus, and, you know, it's a race to save the world. Or you want to do good versus evil with Star Wars, or make it about a video game base. I mean, really, once you poll your students and see what their interests are, and you know your students as individuals, and then you also learn about them as gamers, you're able to build your game-based story. And note that, and I'll come back to this towards the end, but you don't necessarily need to know the whole entire storyline for the whole unit or the whole school year, once you sit down and plan it. For a lot of what I do, there's a lot of organic elements where things are constantly changing and adapting, and that's the great thing about education and schooling and gamification, is that you can add layers as you continue to play the game. So to give you an idea of moving from my bigger storyline into a smaller quest, when my students do the social justice, you saw Legends of the Hidden Courage that I used to kickstart the game, then they begin their own warrior's quest. And again, everything has a little storyline that drives our game forward and that drives the objective. So this is probably one of my introductory quests, and it's probably the smallest one because my students really have 3 missions that they want to complete. It's a 3-week reading unit. They're reading choice novels based on injustice and hatred, things like All American Boys, The Hate U Give, Warriors Don't Cry, and then they're working in book groups to complete these different missions independently. Mission 1, I love playing around with my thesaurus. We have perception, alliances. So with perception, that's just them getting into the book and their perception of what they're reading about. Mission 2, alliances, looking at elements of Gandhi and how he's a model or mentor for our main characters. So many young adult books that focus on social justice and injustice. The characters refer to Gandhi, so we look at his teachings and then they write about that. And then in that last mission 3, they're building a 1-pager off of that to help them develop their writing and their thinking about the book. So this is my students when they get their quest or their mission. It doesn't necessarily look as fancy or as simple as this. They might get a list of the badges that they need to go through, where it's sort of like a choice board of the different tasks, what they're earning for in terms of the badges, or those, when you see XP, that's their experience points. They're working and gaining towards points. I connect it with a learning standard, and then they have to link and show evidence of their files. It might look like a map, and this is with Classcraft. This is a map that they have with their Quest feature that's all linked with Google Classroom that you can personalize and see other people's quests on. So when I'm using Classcraft, my students can access the quest as this map, and I also break it down as a choice board for them. Game boards are another way to lay out my units. So you'll see that what I tend to do is front load all of the work that the students are doing in the unit. We did a murder mystery unit. I wanted to play off the board game Clue, so I made my own little murder mystery game board. Each different room was a different task for them to complete. You'll see that under where it says ballroom, there's a side quest. That's an extra assignment to how I differentiate if a student wants to go above and beyond. If I want to offer supports and models and guides, I have things like task cards or scaffolding sheets to really help differentiate based on my different learners. And there's a lot of choice. Sometimes it's complete the whole board. Sometimes it's pick or choose X amount out of the total there. But again, you can see that each quest that I'm creating with the different missions has a storyline. It's all focused on literacy and reading and writing and really helping and supporting my learners in their own reading and writing lives. So I'll pause again for some questions. Again, I've made a adventure-based learning and quest template to help you create your own class missions in putting together something similar to the Warriors quest that I made, having just 3 different missions, keeping it simple. I will say that with my own students, I start small. I do have units that are for dystopia or investigative journalism, where there are 20 different pieces that can be very overwhelming for my students. So I'm going to say that less is more when it comes to the students and helping them work through the ideas. So let me see if there's any more questions. So, all right, just go back. So Doug, you asked a question with copyright or trademarks in terms of like using the storyline for the reader. Is that what your question was about? Because I will say that I've spoken to Tracy Chi, the author, and she's done some Twitter book chats with my students because they love her book, and she's a great author. And I've told her that I'm using the storyline as the game. So I haven't run into any copyright or trademarks. I'm not like publishing, you know, my game into a whole, like recreating it. So I don't know if that answers your question. Are there any other questions? Okay, great. So again, I gave you a shortened link, right, so you can see these templates that I've created to really help you think through your own activities and units and how you can build a mission there. And hopefully those actually help you to start to brainstorm. You know, everything that I do is adaptable for grade level and content area. And if you have specific questions, you are more than welcome to email me directly, and I'm happy to talk with you more and answer your questions. Just in our short time, I just put up those templates there to help you think about what you're doing in your classroom and then building out that storyline and that mission. So moving forward, because we have about 15 minutes left. I want to leave time for more questions too. A lot of people always ask me questions about gaming versus grading. You know, what am I grading? What is worth game points? Because you saw that with some of my activities that my students are earning what we call experience points, that XP. And it's really up to you what you want that reward to be. I will say that my game points and my grades are two separate things. My grades with my 8th grade students are based on the standards and the learning targets. So what gets graded regarding that would be their assessments, their essays, their short responses. They keep these interactive paper notebooks. And then the game points, they're earning game points for their behavior, their class participation, doing the mini games that we do. My homework is for game points. It's not graded. When we have this like X period where from 2:35 to 3 o'clock, I'm in my classroom available to my students for extra help or to get work done, and that they get points and they can amass the points for that. When they work great as a team and there's effort, or if I'm in a workshop, a writing workshop or a conference with a small group of students or an individual student, and another student needs help and a student jumps in and takes the initiative, I'm going to give them game points for that. And then they're amassing those game points to get different rewards. I'm dealing with 13 and 14-year-olds. Food is always a great reward, but I tend to not do food often, especially when I think about the health of my students. But food definitely works. Maybe it's an extended time on an assessment. They need 2 more days for their essay. Or when they take a reading quiz, I limit the answer choices. There's preferred partner work where they, depending on what we're doing, they can choose where they want to sit or choose who they want to work with. My big piece of the experience points that they were amassing towards was 10,000 XP. Any of my students who received 10,000 XP or higher got to actually preview my final exam the day before the final exam. That was a huge piece. In the past 3 years. My students, I had about 12 students who've gotten to 10,000 XP points. You know, it might even be something like I call the Oracle. If they need a textual quote in their writing and they don't remember where it is, they can ask me to help them find it, and that's a reward, or I could even charge them XP if that's what they need. Also note that negative behaviors can lead to having someone's points taken away or rated. That's really up to you. I rarely do that. I'm more for just adding to the points and helping my students. So one of the things that I talked about was the Classcraft, and this is a great gamification management tool that I recommend. And you can, and this is just a screenshot of what it looks like from my teacher game dashboard. So you can see my students. In this case, this is one of my highest scoring students, Maddie, and her team, and all of her powers. And you'll see that they have a health points that's based on their avatar, their action points, their XP, that's really what they're amassing, and GP is gold points. I like Classcraft really because, one, it's so easy to use. It's streamlined right with Google Classroom. So when I create a quest, I'm actually able to connect it right to Google Classroom, and I can see what students are working with, and it helps me to collect all their points. I do know teachers who use their own gamification management tools where they are making their own Excel spreadsheets and keeping track of their students. I just find that for me, Classcraft is a great tool. The other thing that I'll say about Classcraft, and they, as I said, the premium, which is like less than $100 a year per teacher. And then I started out for the first year and a half just using the free version. They also have different boss battles where I can make little like Quizlet or Kahoot games. They have, as I said, the quest feature. They offer different challenges each day, and it's a great network of teachers. If you're looking for more information, they have a blog, they have their ambassadors, they have webinars that they're offering twice a week now moving forward to help you learn more about that. So key ideas. Start small. You don't have to, like I said, gamify everything. You want to start with a unit or a lesson that you really want to revamp, and allow the game to evolve over time by adding new mechanics, new twists, new turns. Keep it fresh. There are two great gamification Twitter chats on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Central Time. Is XP, that is Michael Matera. He wrote the book Teach Like a Pirate, and he leads a great Twitter chat, and that's where I got started with gamification. So many teachers share so many awesome ideas for all different activities and tips of the trade and building your own leaderboard. And then Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central Time is Games for, and that's the number 4, Ed, Games for Ed. And that is also a great game-based Twitter discussion with 30 minutes, lots of great ideas. So you don't have to start with it all figured out. As I said, games are really a work in progress. They develop through play. See what your students like and are interested in, and then build off of that. Also, you know, you can create a basic game plan to help you organize the structure and build in those game mechanics as you start motivating. Think about the things that you really love and think about, you know, what are the games that, you know, you get excited about? Is it on the Food Network Chopped with the different mystery boards? Do you love escape rooms and you can use your own breakout and build your own escape room? So explore those and allow for choice in your adventures with different choice boards or hyperdocs or side quests. Spend time exploring possible names, characters, connections to make it a thematic based experience. You know, when I'm building a quest, I constantly take out my thesaurus and I will play around with different names for badges. I've had students design their own badges, and then I've taken their designs and put it up on Sticker Mule and had it made into actual stickers. So my students walk around with the badges all on their notebooks, from like the pendant of life that you saw to the even having like a reading ninja sticker. There's so many different things that you can add over time. And there's also so many great resources. In the book I edited, Gamify Literacy, that was a compilation of all different teachers and educators and professors talking about elements of gaming. Michael Matera, he is like a homebrew person. He loves talking about all different both mini games and setting up gamification in his social studies class. Tisha Richmond, her book, Make Learning Magical. She was a culinary arts teacher, and she used to do the Great American Food Truck Race with her students. She talks about that, which is awesome. John Meehan's book, new book that came out recently this year, is all about breakouts and other games. You have Power Up Your Classroom. And Jordan Shapiro, he doesn't talk a lot about gamification, but he's got a few chapters in his book, The New Childhood, where he does talk about how games in our digital world and how we can bring that into our classrooms and utilize it to help our students be the bi-literate that we need them to be. So as I said, I love hearing from people to find out, to answer questions, to find out the gamification they're doing in their classroom. Both my Instagram and my Twitter is Teaching Factor. I share all of my quests and my games on my blog, theteachingfactor.com. You can email me directly so that we can connect, or if you have other questions, or if you're looking for anything in particular, I'm here to help. So we have about 7 minutes left. That's 7 minutes for you to answer questions before we get booted out of the Zoom room. So let me know more questions you have. Don't be afraid to ask. I'm here to help you, and together we can help continue to gamify our learning and help our students succeed. Melissa, you're right. I have to blur those out. I will change that up. Yes, Jennifer. So Sticker Mule, I don't know, I became obsessed with this this past year, but they offer specials like for 50 stickers for $19. And I have had my students design stickers, and I've taken my own designs and created stickers for them to use as badges. I also have friends who make like baseball card size, like power up cards, which they use to help them. Oh, Angela's here. Hey, Angela. Do you ever have students who are just not into the whole gaming aspect of class? So great question, Stephanie. And yes, I have had students who are not interested in it. And, you know, you're never going to get 100%. That would be ideal, but I never get 100%. You know, as I said, my grades and my gaming are separate. Once my students sort of see some of the power-ups and the privileges, then a lot of them do get involved. But then for my students who are like, you know what, I'm never going to get to 10,000, whatever, and sort of are a little apathetic, that is, you know, it's really just about keeping them engaged. So you have your students who will go above and beyond and will be amazing. And then you'll have students who are also completely, you know, just will do the minimum. And I really, you know, I try to do different things throughout the gaming to really help them, to get them involved. You know, I didn't talk about the different player types, but there are different player types, and I try to see and make sure that with each quest that I'm playing to or adding elements to help each player type reach their maximum potential. In terms of the difference between my college level students and my middle school students, my college level students, they are quick to be overwhelmed by things, whereas I find that my own middle school students are completely into the competition, and they love the I'm racing against another team and get it done, whereas some of my college students get overly stressed by that. And I think you have to like gauge who your students are to help them. So, you know, sometimes leaderboards are great and they offer positive competition, and other times it's very stressful. So I sort of have to see between my college level students and my middle and even with my middle school students what's going to work. I tend to do a leaderboard once or twice, not all the time. Because some people get obsessed about it and some people get disheartened with it. My college students love the badges. They love the mini games, but I haven't gamified my entire college class, depending on the class, for them. But they do, I will say that they do love the quests and the choices and the mini games. Other questions? We have about 2 more minutes. So thank you everyone for being here. It was so great to talk with you this morning. If you have any questions, seriously, reach out to me. I'm working from home now, as all of you are. And if you want to see anything in particular, let me know. So have a great day. Continue learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. We appreciate you being here. And thank you everyone for attending. I'm going
Thank
to
you,
go ahead
Amy.
and end the meeting. Bye.
Bye.